Well, hey guys, it's Dr. Drake 63 here today. You've heard me talking about this Colt Trooper Mark III and 357 Magnum, and it showed up in some shooting videos and talked about it with respect to Renwax and all sorts of things. Well, as you've also probably seen if you've listened to these videos, I've been talking about how much I wanted to get the 4-inch barrel version of one of these, and voila! I was able to find one that's in fairly good shape. Now this is going to need some cleaning up. There's some things about this that are going to need to go right away. Somebody decided to color fill this right here. I am not a fan of that, so we're gonna take that out. We're gonna clean this up and put a nice high wax on it. Now, with regards to the grips. In both cases, I lucked out and got what are considered a very nice set of original factory grips in good condition. You can see a little bit difference on the finish, but all in all, very pleased with the condition of this firearm. We're going to do some before and after pics after we get this cleaned up, but what's most important is it functions very well. Nice operation of the cylinder, and as I'll show you in a second, we really don't have any issues with lockup. We don't have any issues with the play on the cylinder from front to back, or what's called end shake. I have that a little bit here. I'm just in spec on that, whereas this has none, so happy about that. And so we're going to talk about this. I mentioned end shake as well as lockup, and obviously proper way to measure lockup is you pull the hammer back, you depress the trigger, let the hammer back down while still depressing the trigger, and then you check and see, am I getting a lot of movement? And this firearm locks up fine. There's a little bit of wiggle in there that is more than you'd get in a brand new firearm, but it's not bad. But the part that's concerned me has been the end shake, and that is back and forth, the cylinder back and forth, and that you were supposed to measure not by pulling the trigger, not by pulling the hammer, but just at rest. Do you get some back and forth? And if you look at this, you will see that you get some. You can see that gap there. For more information on this, you can check my how to buy a revolver video that's out there. But this is just in spec. We used a set of gauges to check the gap between the forcing cone and the cylinder. And like I said, it's just within spec. Well, what does that mean? That means if I want to shoot the heck out of this thing, especially with heavy 357 Magnum loads, I'm going to put it out of spec at some point. So I'm going to tend to baby this firearm a little bit. The new one, or new to me I should say, it's actually 1 year younger than the other one. This particular model is from 1976. This locks up tighter. I'm assuming it's just been shot less. And in terms of checking cylinder back and forth, again, end shake, there's none at all. So I'm very happy about that. This is a firearm that I can shoot a lot more without having to worry about it. And the thing to remember about Colts, all Colts, except for the newest ones, Colt won't work on them anymore. So it leaves you in a situation where you've got a few gunsmiths across the country that will. Slide and Cylinder out of Nebraska is one that comes to mind. They will work on these. They've got somewhere around a 5 or 6 months backlog. So there is that to keep in mind. So due to the popularity of the Python, you see Colts in general are going to be in a higher demand situation from a gunsmithing standpoint. Like I said, Colt doesn't make them anymore. So something to think about. I'm all about comparisons, and here is the Smith Wesson 586, which is also a 4-inch combat Magnum. And we talked about the lockup on the Colt. You can see you've got a similar amount of locked up play on the cylinder. You need to have some. And in terms of how does this compare in cylinder shake, next to non-existent, just like the Colt. More than anything else, I am a huge fan of the craftsmanship as well as the actions and the triggers on these Colt MK3s. The trigger in double action and single action is just plain sweet. Okay, you can see the grips, or stocks as some would call them. These are in excellent shape, and I think this one right here has a little bit of a ding on it. Nothing to get too worried about, but these are in excellent shape. I think to get a set of these, or a set of these for that matter, in that kind of condition, you could be looking at paying several $100s. So, you know, that part right away we have going on. Looking at the overall condition of this before I get to work on it, no rust whatsoever. Taking a look at this, you can see that we've got obviously a surface area here that's going to be prone to cleaning. And as I mentioned, I'm going to take this color fill off. I don't understand why people do that, but that's a preference thing. You can see there's a little bit of holster wear, and there's a little bit of wear up here. But overall, this is in nicer condition than the 6-inch version. So, taking a look at these before pictures. Looking at the other side. You can see there's a slight ring around the cylinder, which you'd expect. Again, how does that compare? Same thing here. But if you look, you've got, you know, what looks to be some kind of, I don't want to say pitting, but the actual finish is somewhat deteriorated in this spot. And you look down here, and this particular firearm is in better condition. So we've got some cleanup to do. Okay, so I just took a little bit of an acetone-based product here, and we were able to get the color fill out of that. Now it's time to clean the barrel, clean the chambers, and slick this guy up a little bit. If you recall from my what to look for when buying a revolver video, the forcing cone is something we want to take a look at, make sure it's not cracked, anything like that. This one is in good shape, needs cleaned up obviously. Very happy with these recessed cylinders. They did not pin the barrel. You hear that a lot with Smith & Wesson's, pin barrel, recessed cylinders. They did not pin these barrels, but they did recess these cylinders on all these Colts, so you don't have an issue with any of that. So the stuff that you really want to make sure is good, looks good, like I said, needs cleaned up a little bit, but it's a nice stout forcing cone without any visible erosion or issues like that. Now here you're seeing I'm using a little bit of Flitz Polish before I get into the waxing. And the reason is, this is a gun that's older. It's got a little bit of tarnish on some different areas. And I have cautioned you against using this, certainly on newer like Smith & Wessons, or anything sparingly. And here's a good example why. If you see right here where I've applied it, yeah, that's some oil and grease, but also that brown you see is actually some of the bluing that's come off. Now, I'm okay with that. I'm not going to scrub the hell out of this thing with this Flitz, and do that repetitively. But here, this is my first time with this particular firearm. It's not been cleaned very well for quite a long time, and what I'm really doing is just getting down to the root of things. I'm not stripping it by any means. However, a regular diet of this stuff is going to wear on your bluing. There's no question about it. Keep in mind, all bluing is, hot bluing is rust. They actually make the metal rust. It's a corrosive process. So eating into the bluing a little bit isn't in itself a horrible thing, but if you do it too much, obviously you're going to end up with issues. So I've just applied a little bit. I'm going to buff this off, and probably will never use this particular product on this firearm again. But I do want to get a clean slate and get some of the tarnish off. Okay, now this is post Flitz. It's not waxed, it's been polished. There's something to remember. The difference between a wax and a polish. A wax coats. A polish, at some point, is going to erode whatever you're polishing. That's why stainless steel, it's not that big a deal, because you're just taking down infinite, almost, layers of steel. You can see how nice this shines now. Got that color flow out of there. As you can see here, again, the color fills out. Just a highlight there. I'm not a real fan of a little bit of pitting you see up there on the end. Probably sat in somebody's holster for a while, probably a leather holster. But that's not looking bad at all. Not looking bad at all. And of course, that little pony there is looking really good as well. So now it's ready for the Renaissance wax. We'll apply this stuff. Just talked about that the other day. And we'll put a high shine on this. Now what I've already done to this firearm is I have already cleaned the barrel. I've already cleaned the chambers. Tool I like to use is kind of a combination of things. I like to put a little CLP or something like that down in the chamber, and then use this brush, which is for a 357. And I'll wipe this off and then use it in each of the chambers, and then use this as well for the barrel, obviously cleaning it between each time, and then I'll run a paper towel through there to make sure they get nice and pretty. Lots of ways to do it. And this is what it looks like after a good cleaning, a good lube. Some work on the finish. Look at the luster of that. I think this gun's beautiful. And without a doubt, with these beautiful grips, it's not without its imperfections. And you can see here, all that color fill is gone. What we have left, just love the blued that Colt used when they were making these guns. It's just such a rich, deep blue, and this was their economy version of the Python. But I think they just did such a good job. The way this is put together, obviously has adjustable sights. We'll be talking about how that works after we shoot it, which will be in, you guessed it, upcoming video. So next to this, I've got a modern day 4-inch combat Magnum 357. This is the Smith Wesson 586. You've seen this plenty in my videos. I love to talk about it. I think it's a great gun. This guy right here is the one I've been wanting, and I've talked about it because I've been so enamored with his big brother. And if you look at a 1976 blued job that, you know, has some holster wear, no getting around that. But if you look at a 1976 hot blue job done by Colt, and you compare it to a 2018 blue job by Smith & Wesson, certainly backing off the camera a little bit, you'd have to say, well, I can't tell which one's new, which one's old. These are both fine looking firearms, without a doubt. The Smith has a nice shiny panel there. You see it's almost like a mirror. You compare that to the Colt. It's got a nice shiny panel that's almost like a mirror. A little bit more of a matte finish. Not quite as glossy as what you see with this Smith. But when you talk about 4-inch combat magnums, you know, here's a couple. I've got the Smith & Wesson 28-2 as well. I would never replace these grips. These are classics. They're beautiful. Love them. Got the same ones, as I said, on the 6-inch version. And just overall, have to be liking that. Have to be liking that. And I'm a Smith & Wesson guy. I'm also a Colt guy. Wish Colt would keep making these guys. I have a feeling if they did, they wouldn't be the same, though. So maybe someday these will be what Pythons are, and fetching ridiculous prices. See what that barrel looks like on the inside. Is there any pitting, any rust, anything of that nature? And the answer is no. Nice and shiny. Mentioned earlier the recessed cylinder. In addition, this has a frame-mounted firing pin. It's not on the hammer itself, and it has that bar safety as well. The rear sight is adjustable in both dimensions, and the front sight is fixed. It is drifted in, so you can replace it if need be. Now, as I've mentioned before, I'm not a collector. I'm a shooter. I don't have room in my gun safe for multiple firearms that I'm not going to shoot. So if I don't hunt with it, if I don't target shoot with it, if I don't use it for self-defense potentially, I probably am not going to keep it in my safe for long. That's why I've had a lot of revolvers come in and out over time, and have tried pretty much every kind of revolver you can get. Same thing with autoloader pistols, and kind of for me, it's just learning what I want, knowing what I want, and sticking to what I want. And with that in mind, knowing that I really wanted this Colt Trooper in 4-inch was something that was not in doubt. The 6-inch is also a beautiful specimen, but as I mentioned, this is something I'm not going to be able to shoot probably as much as I'd like to. Not as much as I could shoot, say, a Smith & Wesson 28-2, which is built like a tank and then some. This is a firearm that has been shot a lot, and because of that, I need to be a little bit careful with how often I want to shoot real heavy loads out of it. I do enjoy shooting it, and I am going to shoot it. This isn't to be left behind for future generations. This is for me. Same thing with this firearm, and I'm just glad to find it in a lot better shape. Something that I'm going to be able to shoot a lot more, which is what they're for, and along with my Smiths and other firearms, plan to take good care of these firearms, keep the forcing cones clean, and other things that can lead to problems if you don't. But for the most part, these are for me to enjoy. And that's what you'll find as you look all throughout my channel. I'm not a guy that's going to take a bunch of pictures of stuff and stick them in the safe and forget about them. If Dave doesn't shoot them, Dave doesn't keep them, pretty much. But I feel very fortunate to buy this. This was at a gun shop that I'll give a shout out to, Morristown, Minnesota, Almans, A-H-L-M-A-N-S. They've had this in their case for a while. I've been looking at it for a while and checking up to see if they still had it, and today was the day I was ready to make a move, and they worked with me a little bit on it and was glad to come up with this firearm. But guys, if you can get The pre-lock Smith & Wessons, great. If all you can get are Smith & Wessons that have the locks, they're still making a darn good product, and I have no problem at all carrying around a 586 or something with the dreaded internal safety lock. But given a choice, I'd rather have a pre-lock one. They're just getting a little bit harder to find as time goes on. Every year, we're a year later. Here's a firearm that's from 1976. In 1976, I was 12 going on 13 years old. 12 going on 13 years old in 1976 when this was made. I'm 55 now. You do the math. This one's from 1975. So, you know, we're fully entrenched in the 70s here. You can almost hear that wah-wah guitar music going in the background and so forth. But very glad to be showing you these firearms today. And like I said, we're going to shoot these in an upcoming video probably in the next few days. And you darn right I'm going to use 357 Magnum loads. And you're darn right we're going to show you what kind of accuracy we can get and take pictures of me shooting them and all that kind of stuff that is a lot of fun for me. Guys, I really appreciate you watching this channel. I really do. I appreciate the comments. I've made friends with a lot of guys, not only through this channel, but through various other social media where the subject was firearms and me commenting or talking about them. And I've made some really dear friends through that process, and I appreciate everybody's support. As always, if you have differing opinions, if you have questions, if you want to know anything at all, please feel free to comment. And this is Dr. Drake 63 saying, carry on.